Have you ever heard the voice of someone who hasn't even been born yet? It may seem impossible, but there are moments in life when something moves through us so deeply, so silently, intensely, that logic can't explain it. And that's exactly what happened to me. A presence that shouldn't have been there, but was. There was no sound in the air, no words spoken aloud, but still, I heard it. As if something, or someone, was calling me, gently, urgently, with a connection not of this world. A call coming from a place the soul recognizes before it even knows. That day, I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. It was just another ordinary moment in my routine, but something in the air felt different, as if time had slowed down just to make me realize. My heart grew restless, and inside, a strange emotion formed. And then, in the midst of that meaningful silence, I heard it. It was like a whisper inside my chest. And it was then that the question arose, without me even knowing where it came from. What if it's him, my son, who hasn't even arrived in this world yet? Maybe you felt something like this too. An unexplainable connection, a hunch no one understands, a moment of contact with something invisible, yet too real to ignore. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you, and perhaps even remind you of something you've experienced but never had the courage to share. This story isn't just about motherhood or spirituality. It's about a presence that transcends time, a bond that defies logic, and how certain experiences change the way we see everything. The connection with a soul that hasn't yet arrived can be stronger than we imagine. And most impressively, it can come in the form of a call, an invisible embrace, a profound certainty without any concrete proof. And as I tell this, perhaps you're remembering a moment that only you experienced, a feeling, a dream, a sign that's etched in your soul. If something deep inside you has ever asked, could it have been him? Or could that have been real? Share it with me in the comments. It's in this space that we discover we're not alone, that there are others feeling, experiencing, and trying to understand the invisible. Your story can touch someone. It might even be exactly what another heart needs to read today. And if you felt any connection with all this, please like the video here, because it shows YouTube that this content has value, that it needs to reach more people who may also be searching for answers. And if you want to follow this journey with me, subscribe to the channel here. It's this exchange that keeps everything alive here. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this kind of content. Stories that touch, that heal, that transform. Before everything happened, my life was immersed in a silence few could perceive. On the outside, I went about my daily routine. Work, commitments, people, empty conversations that masked an old weariness. But inside, there was a strange space, a kind of emptiness that couldn't be filled with distractions or short-term goals. It was as if something was missing, as if a part of me was waiting for something, or someone, and it wasn't something I spoke out loud. You know those feelings that even you don't quite understand? I felt that, as if there were an absence I hadn't even recognized yet, a longing that existed before the story itself began. The idea of being a father has always been confusing to me. While it seemed distant, there was a curiosity I tried to ignore. It wasn't really a plan, more of a poorly explained intuition. There were days when I'd see children on the street and something would tighten inside my chest. Other times, it was as if my mind conjured up scenes I'd never experienced. Me with a child in my arms. Me hearing a child's laughter echoing through an empty hallway. Things like that, simple, but they came out of nowhere and left me with tears in my eyes for no reason. And amidst all this, there were unspoken wounds, a history of family loss, a failed pregnancy years ago, and memories I held onto like invisible relics. Because no matter how much time passes, the heart never forgets what it silently desired. And I carried this nameless desire, this silent yearning. I didn't know if it was fear or hope, maybe both. But somehow, that gap became more present as the days passed. I wasn't looking for explanations, much less signs. But the hidden truth is that when the spirit is ready, the invisible begins to move. It was on one of those ordinary days, when pain and silence seemed to occupy all the space, that something happened. something illogical, but which resonated in the soul, something you can't see with your eyes, but touches you with such force that it completely changes the course of your journey. That day began like so many others, but there was something in the air that felt out of time. You know when the world keeps spinning, but you feel like you've entered a different rhythm, almost as if you're inside a movie? That was it. Sounds seemed muffled, as if every noise were miles away. People talked, cars passed, but everything happened in slow motion, shrouded in a silence that didn't quite fit the scene. It wasn't literal silence. It was the kind of absence only the soul perceives. A strange pause, as if the universe had held its breath for a second too long. The sky that day wasn't any grayer than usual, nor was there any special light. But even so, I felt a subtle weight on my shoulders, an exaggerated calm that almost hurt. It was as if everything around me was waiting for something to happen. I didn't know what, either. I just felt it. My movements were slower, my mind quieter. It wasn't sadness, nor fear. It was a tranquility that carried tension, like a calm before revelation. And it was in this strange atmosphere that it all began. I was home, alone, and had just finished a simple task, something routine. But instead of moving straight on to the next thing, I stopped. I sat there, staring at a fixed point, for no reason at all. My entire body seemed to hear a frequency that wasn't of this world. There was no sound, but it was as if something was calling me from within. A restlessness without anxiety, just presence. It was at that moment that I felt it. I didn't see it with my eyes, but the perception was as real as anything tangible. A sweet, welcoming, yet firm presence. Something, or someone, was there. Not outside, but within the space beyond reason. As if time had given way to the hidden truth that only reveals itself to those ready to listen, without needing to understand. The air grew denser and lighter at the same time, and I knew, without anyone telling me, that I wasn't imagining it. It was as if the universe itself whispered, "Now you'll understand." In that moment, there was no longer any doubt. Something greater was at work. An invisible yet powerful connection crossed the boundaries of the physical, bringing with it a calling, straight from the soul. It was in this state of strange pause, as if I were between two worlds, that it happened. I don't know if it lasted seconds or minutes, but in that silence that spoke louder than any sound, something called to me, not with ordinary words. It was more like a vibration that rang my name from within, without passing through my ears. And yet, I heard it, clearly, as if someone were there, standing beside me, or perhaps inside me, calling me with a tenderness indescribable. The name came with a gentle force, the kind that doesn't frighten, but paralyzes, as if the entire soul recognized the sound and said, "It's for you." The voice was calm, but firm. It wasn't the voice of an adult, nor of a memory. There was something pure, new, of the future. It was as if a fragment of my own, yet unlived history had found a way to manifest itself. As if to say, "I already exist, even if you don't see it yet." At that moment, my body reacted. A shiver ran down my spine, not the kind that comes from fear, but the kind that awakens an awareness of something greater. My eyes filled with tears, without any sadness. It was a raw, genuine emotion that needed no logical explanation. I felt something close and at the same time, out of time. And most impressively, I had no doubt who it was. My mind tried to search for answers, but my heart already knew. It was as if the energy of that voice held a code that only my soul could decipher. A sweet, protective impression, as if someone very small and very ancient was trying to reach my spirit. The presence was so clear that for a moment I looked around, expecting to find someone physically there, but there was no one. And yet, I didn't feel alone. There was a strange certainty that I had been seen, noticed, touched by something beyond logic. It was as if life was giving me a reminder. There is something waiting for you, something that has already chosen you. In that moment, all the certainties I thought I had about time, existence, and what was real began to dissolve. The world seemed to have stopped to allow that moment to happen. There was no noise. There was no rush. Just that call, soft and strong at the same time, telling me that the journey was just beginning, that life, sometimes, reaches us in ways that reason cannot understand, but the heart recognizes immediately. It was right after that silent call that something even stranger, and yet deeply comforting, happened. I don't know if I was asleep, in a trance, or somewhere in between, but the scene unfolding before me was so utterly clear it was impossible to call it simply a dream. The space around me seemed suspended in time, as if every detail had been meticulously designed for that moment. And there, before me, he was, a boy, small, with soft features, intense eyes that held an ancient wisdom, the kind that disarms us without needing to say anything. His face was unfamiliar, and yet, it was as intimate as could be. It was like recognizing something you've never seen but always known. He didn't speak. There wasn't a single word, but his presence said it all. There was a peace so dense in the air that it seemed to envelop my body like a warm blanket on a cold night. It was as if that moment were eternal, as if I could stay there forever, just feeling. The touch came subtly, like a breeze. He held my hand, and in that gesture, there was a transference, not of words, but of purpose, as if he were saying, "I'm coming. But before that, you need to know that I'm already with you." The impact was silent, yet devastating. I felt a love that couldn't be explained. It was a love that transcended logic, that transcended time, that ignored the barrier between before and after. His presence filled something in me that I hadn't even known was empty. It's difficult to describe that look, because it said so many things at once: courage, tenderness, trust, and a certain quiet urgency, as if his time hadn't yet come, but our connection already existed on another plane. He wasn't just a vision. He was the embodiment of a promise, a reminder that connections exist before life begins, that some souls recognize each other even before they meet here. This experience turned me inside out, because the sensation was so real, so tactile, that my entire body responded. My heart beat in a different rhythm. Tears flowed without any sadness. It was reverence. It was gratitude. It was like finding something I didn't know I'd lost, but finding it again made everything finally fit together. And I understood that love doesn't wait for birth to exist. It simply is. It penetrates the invisible and finds ways to manifest itself when we least expect it. And in that presence, there was a mission, a silent but clear intention, as if that soul were saying, "Before I arrive, you must be ready. You must receive me consciously." And that touched me on a much deeper level than I could have imagined. Because it wasn't just about being a parent. It was about being the kind of person who understands that some encounters are already written before life even begins, that the spiritual journey doesn't begin at birth, but in the harmony between two souls who have already chosen each other long ago. The vision slowly faded, like mist dissipating at sunrise, but the feeling remained, and not a day has passed since then that I haven't thought about that moment, about the hidden truth it holds, about the responsibility it carries, and about the silent impact it has, transforming everything within. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when everything calmed inside and out, after the presence dissipated, something continued to resonate. It wasn't a specific phrase, it wasn't a voice in the traditional sense, but there was a message pulsing, almost like a frequency vibrating silently within me. And it was as clear as if it had been spoken aloud. It was as if that being, that soul that visited me before I was even born, had left a message engraved in my emotional field, a code perhaps, something only the heart could decipher. And even without words, I understood. The message was love. Love on a level independent of coexistence, time, or explanation. It was a love without past or future, because it was entirely in the now. That being reminded me that he already knew me. He already felt me. He already chose me. And most importantly, he trusted me. He trusted the space I was creating, even if still unconsciously, to receive him. It was as if he were saying, "I've already chosen you, and I'm here just to remind you of that." But there was more. A vibration of calm so profound it seemed to envelop everything around me, as if to say, everything is okay. And it wasn't all right, in the sense that everything would be easy or perfect. It was all right in the sense that even with the uncertainties, the pain of the past, the traumas, or the doubts, something greater was guiding everything. This calm didn't numb us. It didn't erase reality, but it brought a serene courage, a gentle confidence, a sense that there's an invisible framework organizing life with a purpose that we don't always understand at the exact moment, but that sooner or later reveals itself powerfully. And at the same time, there was a request there, unspoken but felt, a request for presence, for openness, for inner listening, as if that being were saying, "I didn't come for nothing. You need to pay attention." And that part pierced me, because we're always rushing, distracted, accumulating noise and missing the signals. And in that moment, all I could feel was how much we need to be silent inside to hear what the soul wants to say. How much we need to pause the rush to notice what's already happening, even if it's subtle, delicate, almost imperceptible. This message pulled me to a place of loving responsibility, of emotional preparation, of spiritual listening, because it wasn't just a symbolic visit. It was a reminder that sometimes what's on its way already observes us, already loves us, already calls us, even before matter takes shape. This changes everything. It changes the way we live in the now. It changes the way we love. It changes the way we care for the invisible, for what's yet to come, for what pulses within without yet having a name or a fixed face. And the curious thing is that, in the following days, small signs began to appear. A song that played at exactly the right time, a name that repeated itself in unlikely places, a feeling of touch in the middle of the night, nothing that could be proven, but everything made sense to those who had already felt it. And that's when I understood. This message, unspoken, spoke precisely about this, about faith, attunement, and trust in what you feel before you even see it. Because some messages don't arrive through logic, they arrive through the soul. Because as strange as it may seem, the moment I returned to reality was as impactful as the encounter itself. It was like waking up from a deep dive into a silent ocean. My eyes opened, but everything felt different. The room was in the same place. The sounds of the house remained the same, but there was a sensation I couldn't name. My body was there, but my soul still felt touched by something greater. This wasn't just any dream. This wasn't some fantasy created by the mind. It was as if a part of me had been transported to a space where time doesn't function as it does here. For a few seconds, I simply remained silent, unsure whether to cry or smile. A mixture of emotions came rushing in. A sob stuck in my throat, as if something had been touched deep inside, and along with it, a peace that didn't match what logic was trying to tell me. Because rationally, it didn't make sense, but emotionally, everything did. It was as if my heart knew before my mind, as if that presence was still with me, even after I returned. There was also a curious feeling, that of having received something very precious, as if I had been entrusted with a secret, a memory, an experience not shared with just anyone, not out of fear, but out of reverence, because it was intimate, it was sacred, it was mine, and at the same time, I knew it wasn't just mine. This feeling, this calling, touched me deep inside, but it seemed to echo something greater, as if other people also needed to hear this, experience this, remember this. It was like a message that comes to you, but wants to carry on. And then the challenge began. How to move forward after something like this. How to continue living an ordinary routine after experiencing the extraordinary. The answer I found is, we don't carry on as if nothing had happened. We change the way we observe everything. Because after a moment like this, even silence takes on a new meaning. Even emptiness becomes a fertile space. Even pain begins to possess a kind of hidden wisdom. In the days that followed, I still found myself overcome with emotion, trying to make sense of what I had experienced. Sometimes it felt like a distant dream, but all I had to do was close my eyes and breathe calmly, and everything came back. The presence, the call, the feeling that someone not yet born, already knew me, already loved me, already calling me from within. This gave me strength. It gave me meaning. It made me rethink the rush, the fears, the certainties I thought I had, because now there was something stronger inside me, something I no longer needed to understand, just accept. Because what struck me most, after all, was not just the experience itself, but what it began to provoke within me. It was as if that voice, that presence, that call, had planted a seed, and that seed began to grow in the form of questions. But they weren't empty questions. They were questions charged with purpose, with intent, with a genuine desire to understand, not just with the mind, but with the heart. Because there was something there that transcended any logical explanation, and I knew, deep down, that that presence wasn't a figment of my mind. It was a spiritual connection. It was one soul speaking to another. Perhaps you've wondered if it's possible for someone unborn to touch you so intensely. I've wondered that too, many times. Can souls still on their way connect with us? Is there somehow a bond that transcends time, biology, and physical birth? The answer isn't simple, but the feeling, oh, it leaves no doubt. It was real. It was as real as the air I breathed. And most curiously, it brought me peace. There was something about that experience that was wordless but carried a profound clarity. It was as if this presence were there to say, I exist, even if they don't see me yet. And it made me reflect on how many things in life we only believe when we see them. But what about when the soul sees before the body? And when the connection happens before the physical encounter? There's something sacred about that. Something that shakes the entire fabric of what we understand as time, reality, and love. Maybe it was a child on the way. Or maybe it was a child who, for some greater reason, would never come in the way we imagined, but who still exists on a higher plane. A spirit who chose me, who wanted to touch me, who wanted to leave its mark even before arriving. Or maybe it was a soul who simply passed by to say, I am with you. What moves me most about all this is realizing that not everything needs an explanation. Sometimes you just need surrender, openness, sensitivity, and when we allow ourselves to feel, some truths come, even without words, even in silence. This experience made me rethink how connected we are to something greater, to an invisible field that unites hearts, destinies, stories that haven't even begun. It made me understand that sometimes spiritual life touches us before life even begins, that spiritual love precedes physical existence, and that there are messages that only the heart can decipher. Because what came next wasn't just a fleeting relief or a momentary sense of solace, it was a true shift in mindset. Something inside me reorganized, as if that experience had reshaped my priorities, my values, my way of being in the world. The feeling of having been touched by a soul that hadn't yet arrived on the physical plane became a kind of internal compass, pointing to something greater than I could name. It wasn't just about motherhood or fatherhood. It was about presence, about mission, about listening to what we normally ignore, but which insists on calling us to our hearts. From that moment on, I began paying more attention to signs, to the whispers of the invisible, to dreams that seemed more real than waking, to chills for no apparent reason, to encounters that happen not with the body, but with the soul. It's difficult to explain this to someone who's never experienced something like this, but anyone who has experienced spiritual contact knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's not about seeing ghosts or hallucinating. It's about a heightened level of perception, where intuition speaks louder than logic, where feeling is more important than understanding, and where the hidden truth of things is revealed in small yet meaningful details. That presence taught me something that no reading, no doctrine, no external explanation could have taught me, that there is a profound purpose behind every life that touches ours, even if that life is yet to come. And that perhaps, just perhaps, some souls manifest before even being born to prepare us, to strengthen us, to remind us that true love does not depend on time, flesh, or the chronology of existence. It simply is. It simply comes. And when it comes, it transforms. I've never been the same person since that day. My once timid faith became an anchor. My fear of the future dissolved into quiet confidence. And the idea of becoming a parent, even though it hadn't been on my horizon before, took on a new dimension. It was no longer about giving birth to someone. It was about being available to welcome a soul that had already chosen me, a soul that knows me better than I know myself, and that, for some reason I'm still figuring out, wanted to connect with me first. Today I hear the world differently. The inner voices are no longer noise. Silences have meaning. The coincidences, which I previously ignored, now make me stop, take a deep breath, and ask, what is trying to be shown here? Because I've learned, and this has come with a vengeance, that messages are being delivered all the time. Some come through words, others through dreams, still others through a feeling in my chest that says, keep going, I'm with you. And this feeling is sacred. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because deep down, what this experience taught me was that there are forms of communication that go beyond any logic, and that perhaps, even before a soul reaches the physical world, it is already whispering around us, trying to reach us, not always with words, not always with clear images, but with feelings that touch layers that reason cannot access. It's as if life were warning us that there is something beyond, a dimension where time doesn't count, where distance doesn't impede, and where love is the thread that connects everything. You know, sometimes we get used to looking for signs only in what can be proven, but there are moments, and this was one of them, when everything inside you knows. You feel it, you recognize it. Something vibrates differently. Something inside you says, there's something here that's not of this world, but is deeply connected to your existence. And when that feeling arrives, you can't ignore it. It's as if a new space opens within your soul, where intuition begins to guide you, and your perception of life expands irreversibly. After everything I've experienced, one thing has become very clear to me. There are encounters that don't depend on birth or farewell. There are connections that come before, that continue after, and that sometimes manifest themselves in the midst of our routine, catching us by surprise. Because the universe doesn't just work with what we see, it also communicates with the invisible part of our consciousness, that part you feel without needing to understand. And it is there that these messages arrive, gently, with love, with a clarity that needs no explanation. And if this video touched your heart in any way, help me continue bringing stories like this. Subscribe to the channel. Your participation keeps this message alive and allows it to reach more people who may also be waiting for a sign.